What is going on, everybody? Been a diehard Pistons fan since '03 and eager to see this team getting back to playing winning basketball. The Detroit Pistons were relatively in the news today for two different things, despite them not playing a game yesterday or today. In this video, we're going to talk about both of those topics. The first one being the Pistons banning hoodies from practice, and the second one being Cade's ranking in the ESPN Top 100. Before we dive into it, I know that the quality of this video, the microphone, the visual, everything in between is not normally this rough. I am traveling for the week, so please forgive me until I'm back to my main setup, but did want to continue to get some videos out for you, especially when the Pistons are hitting my timeline more than normal for an off day. So the first thing that we do need to talk about here is the headline that got quite a bit of traction online in Pistons communities that was talking about JB Bickerstaff banning hoods from practice. Now, I'll give you guys a quick rundown of what the article says and then kind of share my opinions on it. The article is headline saying Detroit Pistons changes range from staff to roster to wardrobe, all with one goal in mind. This was published on the New York Times, and the main headline that was shared on Twitter and other places like that was JB Bickerstaff just saying that he isn't allowing the players to wear their hoods up in practice. He was quoted saying, "Just the last shred of that old school mentality, just growing up with my dad. You don't wear anything on your head during the game. You don't wear jewelry. You practice how you play." Now, a lot of people kind of chimed in and shared their opinions on that, and I will as well, but I do want to add some context before we get to that point, because there was quotes in this article I don't think a lot of people actually read, because you know how it goes, a lot of people just read the headlines, and they actually had some players speaking on it as well. Cade Cunningham said, "You know, in school classrooms, a lot of times teachers say, take your hood off, so it's all the same thing. It's just about being professional and being ready to play." And Malik Beasley also chimed in, mentioning that even the vets, like himself, are not allowed to wear hoods in the Pistons practice. So I would say that does kind of change the way that I think maybe people should interpret it. It's not something that the players are against or something that seems to be causing any issues. It's just something that JB has brought into this team to help kind of shape the culture in the way that he sees fit. I've always been big in my principles on not judging people based off what they're wearing, based off their hair length. I've had my hair plenty long before. My dad did as well. You know, I'm definitely not the type of person who thinks that hats should be removed indoors or anything like that. But for this point, I don't see it as any harm. At the end of the day, the Detroit Pistons are unfortunately in as big of a need for a culture shift as any professional sports team. And if this is one small way that JB Bickerstaff believes that he can help bring that culture shift, I'm all for it. It would be different if this was coming in from a coach coming onto a team that's already well formulated and been together for a while and trying to make these types of rule changes. But I think all things considered, where the Pistons are as a team, it's really not a big deal. And at the end of the day, it's just a hood. If your coach doesn't want you to wear it, just take it off and practice without it. I guess it would be kind of annoying if you did like to wear hoods. I like to wear hats. When people tell me take off my hat, sometimes I get a little bit bothered by it. But if I was a part of the Pistons and I understood the context and the scenario, I would be all for it and trying to help build that culture as well. So moving on to talk a bit about the ESPN Top 100 rankings. Man, this was kind of crazy. ESPN ranked Cade Cunningham in their top 100 rating at 67th overall. He was listed behind players like RJ Barrett, Kobe White, KCP, and even second-year player Derek Lively. Now, the biggest thing about this is normally I'm always the type of person who says, don't take these top 100 rankings too seriously. They're typically made for driving engagement. This is exactly what they want. They want people talking about how outlandish it is. If they just made the top 100 as consensus as possible, people would just kind of look at it, shrug, and say, that sounds about right, and moves on. But unfortunately, I think Cade was one of the people who was kind of used to drive that engagement today. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to sit here and tell me that he is not as valuable as somebody like Derek Lively, who I very much like and would love to have on the Pistons, it's just not really right. So at the end of the day, Derek Lively is a 7-point per game, 7-rebound per game player who is playing 22 minutes a game all through the playoffs, all through the regular season. What he did for that Dallas team as a rookie was absolutely incredible, but he was put in the perfect position for him to play alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, sit in the dunker spot, catch lobs, play some defense, and go about his day. The offensive load that Cade Cunningham has to bear is just so much more than Derek Lively or even a lot of these other guys on this list like RJ Barrett or KCP who are put in front of him. I don't really think it's fair to say that. What I can promise you is, regardless of what ESPN says, if the NBA GMs had a complete wipe of all the teams today and they said draft players for this year and this year only, I'm adding that in there because if it was long-term, Cade would be way up the list. But if they just had a draft where all that mattered is you have 1 year to build a successful basketball team, Cade Cunningham would not still be on the board come 67. Cade Cunningham would get snatched up well before players like Derek Lively, well before players like RJ Barrett, and even guys like Kobe White and KCP, because it is much easier to find a replacement for those type of guys than it is to replace a guy who is a 6'6 guard, 6'7 guard, can be your primary initiator, score at 3 levels, and be a complete and total engine for your team, and that's what Cade is currently. I know it's really hard sometimes for people to see the forest through the trees, considering the losing that they did last year. You'll have some really dense people who will say, how could he be even 67 when he hasn't won that many games? Just watch the games. You guys have seen it. The Cade Cunningham experience has been a whirlwind. It's been tough for him in every way imaginable, and he still managed last year to put up 23 points, 8 assists per game on 45% from the floor while cutting down on his turnovers and improving marginally in every aspect that people wanted to see him improve in. So, at the end of the day, as I mentioned, these rankings are all really just for clicks. They really shouldn't be taken seriously. At the very most, maybe some bulletin board material. It is a little bit disappointing because, like I said, I normally try and don't give these too much importance, but when they're coming from somewhere like ESPN, you know that that's a valid enough source that these rankings are probably getting sent to the players or they'll hear about it. So at the very most, hopefully this is some bulletin board material for not only Cade, but all the other Pistons that didn't make this list, because they released 100 through 50 and there's no other Pistons included there. So I guess we have one player out of the top 100 in the NBA according to ESPN. And I get it. We have to prove ourselves, all this and all that, but just having Cade below guys like Derek Lively is just kind of crazy to me. Let me know what you guys think on the hoodie ban. Let me know what you guys think on the ESPN rankings. We'll be back to my regular setup here in less than a week now. But regardless, more videos to come between now and then. Catch up with you soon.